Thank you very much. Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's an honor to speak with you on the traditional territory of the Kwanda First Nation and the Tonquetchin Council. And we're grateful for the deep care that Yukon First Nations have always shown for this land. I want to start by giving a big thank you to the Government of Canada and Parliamentary Secretary Brendan Hanley, specifically, for standing with Yukoners. This year, the Canadian Community Building Fund is bringing $18.75 million to the Yukon. That money will help build what our communities need today and for years to come. From clean water to recreation spaces and energy projects, this fund supports what matters most. And the best part, communities get to choose their own priorities. Local folks know what works best for their people, and that's how it should be. We've seen incredible projects bloom from this fund, creative, smart, and grounded in what's needed. From better roads and greener energy to safer, more welcoming community spaces, and the results speak for themselves. It doesn't matter if you're in a small village or a bigger town, this fund reaches everyone. Because strong communities aren't just built with bricks and wire. They're built with connection, care, and shared purpose. We're proud to keep working together with Canada, Yukon First Nations, and our cities and communities to build a bright, resilient future. Thanks again to the Government of Canada for being steady partners, and thank you to the community leaders across Yukon putting this support to good use. I can't wait to see what we build next. Thank you. Merci Joe. Bienvenue.
Thank you, Premier Pemberton. Next, we will hear from Parliamentary Secretary Hanley.
Thank you, Natalie. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde entier. Thank you to the Premier also for being here, and Minister Mostyn. Really great to be here for this announcement, and I also want to add my acknowledgement of where we are on the traditional territories of the Kwanda First Nation and the Tonquetchin Council. Federally, our government is focused on building a stronger Canada by investing in the housing, transit, and infrastructure that forms the backbone of our communities. And that's why we're working in partnership with territories, provinces, and municipalities to build bold by investing in strong infrastructure, driving up housing supply, and strengthening the economy. Our government is using all available resources to build safe and strong communities. Today's announcement is helping build infrastructure projects that support affordable housing and foster connected communities. That's why I'm also excited to be here today to announce our government's provision of over $18.7 million to communities across Yukon to support their local infrastructure projects under the Canada Community Building Fund for 2025-2026, everyone's favorite infrastructure fund. C'est pourquoi je suis ravi d'être ici aujourd'hui pour annoncer que notre gouvernement distribue plus de 18,7 millions de dollars aux collectivités du Yukon afin de soutenir le projet d'infrastructures locaux dans le cadre du Fonds canadien d'infrastructure communautaire pour 2027-2026. These funds help Yukon First Nations municipalities and unincorporated communities undertake projects that address local infrastructure priorities now and in the future. Investing in modern quality infrastructure is essential to fostering connected communities where Canadians can thrive. For example, in Watson Lake, funding is being used to enhance the Y Lake Trail with improved surfaces, accessible seating, new signage, and other upgrades to benefit residents and visitors year-round. Through the Canada Community Building Fund, recipients in the Yukon have the flexibility to make strategic infrastructure investments across a range of 19 different categories with the support of the Government of Yukon. This funding allows recipients to invest in projects that stimulate local economies and, again, connect our communities. So like the Premier said, this allows communities and municipalities, First Nation communities, and governments to choose their priority projects. In the Yukon, more than $5.08 million in funding has already gone towards projects in these categories between March and April of this year, from improvements in water and wastewater services, local roads, active transportation networks, and flood resilience. I'll just repeat that in French. Au Yukon, plus de 5 millions de dollars ont été déjà consacrés à des projets dans ces catégories entre mars et avril de cette année, notamment à l'amélioration des services d'approvisionnement en eau et en traitement d'eau usée, des routes locaux et des réseaux de transport actifs, ainsi que la résilience aux inondations. The Canada Community Building Fund also ties investments to actions taken by provinces, territories, and local governments to increase housing supply. We need all orders of government to work together to get homes built at a scale and a speed that we have not seen since the Second World War. So to boost the supply of affordable housing, our government will establish Build Canada Homes to help scale up programs like the Canada Community Building Fund. Build Canada Homes will accelerate the development of affordable housing projects, catalyzing a new housing industry based on innovative Canadian technology, Canadian workers, Canadian lumber. Every Canadian deserves an affordable and sustainable home, a place where they can put down roots to build a prosperous future. As we build a strong Canada, innovation, technology, and purposeful collaboration will be essential to shaping our communities. When Canadians come together, Canada builds infrastructure that lasts. It's time to build Canada stronger by building big and building now. And together we can lay that foundation to build the strongest economy in the G7. So thank you, Ganeshish, merci Cho, Jonathan, merci beaucoup. Thank you. Back to you, Natalie.
Thank you, P.S. Hanley. And next up we have Minister Mostyn.
Hang on. Make my way. All right. Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Premier and Parliamentary Secretary Hanley, for your opening remarks. I've been fortunate to work in this role and previous roles in highways with a very collegial and cooperative and respectful relationship with the federal government to bring a historic amount of infrastructure, and by infrastructure we're talking recreation facilities, roads, airports. We just yesterday opened up the new airport up at Whitehorse International, and it's a historic $250 million investment in the territory that again shows how over the last 9 years our federal government, working in collaboration with our territory, has managed to improve the lives of Yukoners and make historic investments in infrastructure which was woefully needed to make it more resilient to our changing climate, make lives better for Yukoners. And now, in an era of trade chaos and tariffs and all the rest of it, we have a federal government who is again looking to make, as MP Hanley just said, make our territory and our country internationally competitive, more resilient, and work towards being the strongest economy in the G7. So it is a great honor to be here, as you've heard earlier today, gathering today on the unseasonably warm and sunny traditional territories of the Kwantlen First Nation and Tonquachin Council to announce an allocation of $18.75 million. I like to round to 19. You can hold me accountable for that. From the Government of Canada's Canada Community Building Fund to the Yukon for this year. The Canada Community Building Fund is important, and it comes from the federal government to build needed resilient infrastructure in our communities. And although it's been going for a while, we still know that many Yukoners do not know about it or how important this fund is to their communities and to themselves. So it's important we talk about it today. The fund has been vital in helping us deliver infrastructure that improves our lives. You've heard some of the things today. There's the renovations of the Old Crow Ski Lodge, the installing a much needed water tank at Watson Lakes Fire Hall, improving Whitehorse's public transit system, supporting civil work for a new Tonquachin Council subdivision, and preparing new comprehensive community and land use plans for the Selkirk First Nation. Those are some of the things we're doing with this money. There's a lot of good stuff happening across the territory, and those are just a few of them. Yukon municipalities, First Nations, and the government of Yukon, on behalf of unincorporated communities, decide which projects are built with the funding. So the fund helps us collectively create healthy, vibrant communities, and it empowers recipients, be it municipalities, First Nations, unincorporated communities, to build what's most important for them. This federal funding program caters to the resilient and independent Yukon spirit. It lets us implement northern solutions for northern priorities. And I hear this from communities and from Yukoners all the time. They want to be able to take their destiny into their own hands. So I'm excited to see other Canada Community Building Fund projects across the territory that embody the North, from wastewater facilities and drinking water to roads and community energy systems. This fund is enormously flexible. Many funds are pigeonholed. You have to do this or that. This gives Yukoners the flexibility to do what they want and take control of their own communities and their own lives. So my heartfelt thanks to the Government of Canada for continuing to support the territory with historic infrastructure funding to create essential infrastructure for Yukoners, decided by Yukoners, so we can all live healthy, happier lives. We've seen an enormous growth in the territory in the last 8 years. That, I think, is largely because of the collaborative and very positive relationship we've had working together over the last 8 or 9 years. So, with that, I'm going to take my seat again. Thank you all for taking time out of your lives to come down here and hear about this. And we'll take some questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister Mostyn. And now we will take in questions from media. So I will call on each media outlet, and everyone will have one initial question and a follow-up question. And we're just going to circulate the mic now. And let's go to Tori at CBC first.
That's a double.
Okay, perhaps this is best for either Richard or Premier Pemberton. Would you be able to tell us more about what communities or projects this funding will be used for, if you know that information? If possible, if you could answer in English and French, that would be great.
All right. I'll take a first stab at this, if I might, but I will not, unfortunately, be able to do it in French. I can barely speak English, so my apologies. But it is difficult, actually, for us, because the fund is directed by municipalities, First Nations, and others. It's difficult for me to specify as a territorial government what's happening, because really, again, it's about municipalities taking their own destiny in their hands. They're duly elected governments, and they'll make decisions about what this, how this fund is allocated to benefit their citizens. And I don't want to get in their way and say, that this is that, or get ahead of their own funding announcements. I'm sure that the department itself can get you a list of funding. I mean, we've given you some projects that have already gone ahead. I think there was also a resurfacing of the Canada Games Center track up and that type of thing. That's the type of thing that where how can you, like if the municipality says, you know, we need this track resurfaced, where can I get money for that? It's very difficult to find that project a home in many available funding pots. But this is flexible enough to allow municipality to do that. And they have taken that and done that. So that's one example, I guess. And you've heard others. I mean, the land use planning up in Selkirk, helping get infrastructure into the Tom Quaching Council's subdivision, you know, like we helped with that. So it's really directed by First Nations, municipalities, and unincorporated communities to get to do what they want to get done with very few strings attached. Does that help? That's sort of.
Yeah, in terms of right now, if you were mentioning your previous projects, but the funding, that's the funding been used yet, but it's still.
Yeah, no, so it comes in every year, and that's one of the reasons why we're having this discussion today, is that many Yukoners, many even municipalities don't know that they don't know the importance of this fund. So this is just another opportunity for us to remind Yukoners that this money is available to them. Almost $19 million a year comes in that can be used by municipalities, First Nations, and unincorporated communities to do what they want to do in their municipalities. And they have the authority to actually request that money and do what they want to do with it. Okay. So you might want to reach out to some of the municipalities and ask them what they're going to do with the money that they receive every year. We have, Julie isn't here today, but Julie, who worked on this, has done an incredible amount of work to streamline and improve the way this money is handed to the municipalities, to cut down on the red tape, to make it easier for municipalities to access this money. She's a wonder, and I encourage you to talk to CS and get some of the details about that incredible work. It's made it a lot easier for the recipients of this money to track and manage the money that's coming into their governments.
Thank you. Ray, did you have a follow-up question?
Is this an electioneering announcement with the federal Liberals?
An election announcement. Well, this is not an election announcement. We have been talking about the Canada Community Building Fund for a while. This is, we've made some refinements to the program, which I mentioned, the civil service and how they've done that. This is an opportunity for us to actually, having done the work with community services, to streamline and improve the way that this is done, and working with the federal government to increase the amount of CCBF money we've got. It's just an opportunity to talk about it. We've been actually having to schedule this for months now, but MP Hanley's been very, we've had federal election, there's been so much going on, it's been difficult to get before all of you with this announcement. And so it is coming now, but it is an important yearly announcement that has been improved and made easier for municipalities and First Nations and unincorporated communities to access. And so it just so happens that here in the late days of summer, before you talking about it today.
Okay, and we're going to move on to Stuart Jonathan. I'm just going to circulate the mic over to Stuart.
Not have been further away if I tried. I'm going to cheat a little bit with a double-barreled question for Mr. Mostyn. How do communities choose projects to apply for funding through this fund, and how do projects get approved?
Okay. I think the easy answer for that is that we actually allocate the funds to the municipalities. So they have Canada Community Building Fund that they can then pull on, and they make the decisions on what they want to fund with that money. As I said, there's not many strings attached. If you want, as I said in my previous answer, if you'd like some technical details about some of the refinements and improvements we've made to help municipalities manage these funds and make it easier for them, cutting the red tape and giving more power to them to actually access these funds, I encourage you to ask the CS itself, and it can go into some detail and give you a lot of information about the many refinements that Julie and her team have done in launching this new CCBF project.
So there are no, I'm not phrasing this right, but there are no limits on what a certain community or municipality or First Nation can no limit on infrastructure project that they can use this money
The
for.
criteria is what you're asking.
Right? You want to know what is the criteria? And Minister Mostyn can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, oftentimes I hear from the good citizens of Yukon and throughout the city here about why did we invest in, put this much money into this particular project? We'll use the new gymnastics as an example. The reason that money is invested into that project, or that much money is invested into the project, because that is specific to a bucket of money that is coming from our good partners on the federal side. What's very unique about this, very unique, is that, you know, that project that was maybe a little bit pie in the sky, maybe you know, something that there was no conduit to any other bucket to get that funding, is now available to those municipalities, First Nations, and through us unincorporated communities, right? So it's very unique. The criteria is not as stringent as a lot of other funding pots, and this is a unique piece, not only for us in the Yukon, but throughout the country, right? So this works well for those stakeholders, and considering that this is I believe around a $200 million fund over 10 years, it's incredible, right? You know, this is a very positive thing for especially smaller unincorporated communities that want to do some good work for their citizens. This is a fine piece of work.
Thank you, Stuart. Dana from Yukon News.
All right. I'm sorry if I missed it, but has the money for funding for 25-26 been spent, and does the funding get used up every year?
We can, again, and I'm hogging the mic, if any colleagues who would like to step in, they certainly can, but this money is distributed, it's earmarked for communities, and it's up to communities to tap in and actually spend that money. And I believe that this, well anyway, we'll go with, I encourage you to ask some specific questions about this of community services. But I'm reluctant to go and say, hey, you know, they could be used for this or that, because it's up to those communities to decide what the money's used for. So, you know, the Yukon government manages this on behalf of municipalities. It has been in the past, there's been a lot of administrative work that had to be done by the municipalities to manage this thing. We've worked very hard to streamline that for municipalities, make it easier for them to manage the fund themselves, make the fund more usable for municipalities, First Nations, unincorporated communities, and talking to you today also helps us to broadcast that this money is available for these communities, and let Yukoners know that there is, as the Premier just said, almost $200 million available over the next 10 years to help municipalities improve their communities, make them more livable, more resilient, more able to handle the challenges we're going to be facing in the next years through the generous help with the federal government. So, you know, this used to be called gas tax, right? This is the former gas tax. It's now got a much more, it's a lot more to say. It's a mouthful to say what this fund is. I don't like the acronym, but the reality is that in Canada, we can see where our tax money is going. We pay into this country to support projects like this, and this is, Canadians can see what their money is building. It's helping to make their lives better. And this is one of the ways that the federal government and the territorial government is doing that. It's putting money into the hands of Yukoners so they can shape their destiny through their community governments. And it's very, very important.
It's still not clear to me if municipalities or communities are sitting on money from previous years, or if this money gets spent every year.
It's up to municipalities to decide that. So, you know, I encourage you to talk to municipalities about it. Teslin, Carmax, Dawson, they may have gas tax money sitting in a fund that they haven't spent yet, because maybe they're letting it build up so they can build something more substantial. But if they needed to build a new resurfacing of a track, or put in a playground, or put municipal infrastructure in the ground, they can do that because they've got the money available to them to do that. And it's up to them to decide how it's going to be spent. So, you know, I can't say off the top whether Whitehorse has spent all of this gas tax money. I suspect it probably hasn't, but it has, as a duly elected government, the opportunity now to decide how best to spend that money on behalf of the citizens that it represents. And I've always said that it's up to municipalities to do what municipalities are responsible for. I'm not going to tell Whitehorse how to spend their gas tax money, or that they should spend their gas tax money. That's up to the duly elected politicians of those municipalities to make that decision. And that's really great that they have that funding available to spend for their citizens at their discretion.
I'll just add to that. I think that our responsibility and our commitment to the federal government is to administer these funds. And I think it's safe to say that on our end, we absolutely make sure that all the funding goes out, right? And that's very important, because I don't think any government, including our federal counterparts, want to see, you know, us sitting on money that they designated to go somewhere else, right? So I think it's very safe to say that on our side, that all the money is distributed out to the appropriate stakeholders.
Just to add, like, as I said earlier, Dan, like, what the territorial government has done, what the Department of Community Services has done over the last couple of years, is refined and improved the way that we administer the fund so that it's easier for municipalities to access and manage it. That's one of the things that, you know, Ottawa's investing in our infrastructure, making this money available to us. Our job is to make sure that it's not only available to the municipalities, but it's done in a way that's easier for them. We've been working with the Association of Yukon Communities and others to have this work done. Having finished that work now, the municipalities have that money in a much less, with a little bit less red tape to deal with, to actually get this money towards projects that will benefit their constituents as they see fit, not as I'm telling them to do, not as the federal government is telling them to do, but they can allocate the money for themselves. And if you have questions from municipalities, I phone them up and ask them and see what they want to do with the money and how they're doing it. That's one of the things why we're talking about this today, so that Yukoners and municipalities know that there's this money available that they can actually access to do what they see fit, to use as they see fit.
MP Hanley, is the federal government tracking the municipalities and communities spending when it comes to the gas tax fund, the Canada Community Building Fund?
Thanks for the question, Dana. I think it really is, there's a contribution agreement that the money is flowed through the Yukon government, and then as Minister Mostyn described, then to the municipalities. I think I'm not aware of a tracking system. I can probably get some clarification there, but I think it's up to I think it's really, this is discretionary funding that the municipalities have for their own infrastructure priorities. And I know that money is used because, over and over again, the most frequent, by far, priority for any municipality is infrastructure. So, great fund, never enough.
And I can, again, Dana, like that, as I said, the federal government distributes to the territory $18.75 million to distribute to our municipalities and our stakeholders. It's the territorial government, because we're receiving the money, we track how that money is distributed, and we've made improvements to make that easier for municipalities, as I was saying this morning. Municipalities can then access that money as they see fit. We've made it easier for them to access and track that money, so and I am telling you right now that I urge you to talk to CS and the team at CS who have refined this process, so you can get a better idea about how that money is distributed to the municipalities. And I can tell you that before there was a lot of hoops and a lot of tracking that had to be done and yearly administration. We've worked with them to try to make that a lot easier, cutting red tape to make this fund a lot more usable by municipality, a lot easier for, because I've heard this, and we talked about it with the comprehensive municipal grant. Municipalities are saying we don't have a lot of people, we don't have a lot of stuff to do. We've been working internally to make it easier, so we're trying not to tax the staff of municipal governments, these smaller municipalities, in dealing with this infrastructure money and other things. And this is part of our efforts to improve life for Yukoners by making the administration of some of these things a little bit easier.
Thank you, Dana. We're just going to circle back to CPC since we have time spreading that extra questions are asked by media. First, just MP Hanley, if you're able to tell us a little bit about what the impact will be for Yukoners from this funding in both English and French.
Which is
It's my English is my French. Thanks, Tori. So really, I'll just maybe continue what I was just talking about, which is how infrastructure is such a priority. It is a national priority. We see this even in today's announcement by Prime Minister Hanley of really a major industrial strategy and a commitment again reiterated on building homes and building housing supply. We can't have housing without the infrastructure to support it. But having repeatedly toured the communities and municipalities here in the Yukon, I know how important infrastructure is, whether we're talking about the sewer lines, whether we're talking about clean water, recreational facilities, parks, state parks, all of the categories that fall under the community recreation facilities, everything. So infrastructure is always the priority, and And I say because of rising building costs, because of our unique circumstances in the north with higher costs, with the need to refresh under the strains of climate change and permafrost melt, the needs for infrastructure are ever growing. So this is hugely important to Yukoners and Yukon citizens, whether living in Whitehorse or rural communities. So this is why I say it really is one of the most popular funds. As Minister Mostyn says, previously known as the gas tax, because it was funded through some of the carbon pricing revenue, but this is a permanent commitment. This is a permanent fund, and again, as the Premier and Minister Mostyn reflected, that there's a 10-year commitment in funding, of which 18.7 is this year's tranche. So I don't know if that gives you the flavor. Je peux peut-être répéter en français brièvement que c'est l'infrastructure, c'est la priorité pour les collectivités au Yukon. N'importe où que je vais et discute avec les conseils d'administration des municipalités, c'est toujours l'infrastructure qui est la plus grande priorité. Donc, n'importe si c'est pour appuyer les besoins pour le logement, on a besoin de l'infrastructure. Si c'est pour les tuyaux et le traitement d'eau, c'est pour tout ce qui est une forme d'infrastructure. C'est toujours un besoin. Surtout avec les circonstances uniques dans le Nord, pour comment il faut toujours renouveler et les coûts de bâtir dans le Nord. Donc on attend toujours des renouvellements des fonds pour l'infrastructure en réfléchissant que c'est toujours la priorité pour les municipalités.
I have one question.
Oh, sorry, we're just going to move on to see if Stuart, okay, has any extra questions. Okay, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Tori.
Premier Pemberton, what's your response to complaints from the First Nation of Montreal down in the Chamber of Mines about the draft framework for the new minerals legislation?
No, I don't think this is a time to talk about that, right? Like, this is a time to talk about this great fund that's available to municipalities, to unincorporated communities, to First Nations. I will say that, when trying to do what's right, there's always challenges, and we'll continue to work through those challenges and to get what we need to get done. Thank you.
Thanks, Tori. Dana, did you have any more questions? We have time for one more question.
No, I don't think so. I think I'll just ask a question after.
This fund, was it earmarked before PM Carney started trimming the fat, so to speak?
This was an agreement and a commitment. Where we know that we're moving into a new budget season. This funding came out of previous budgets, budgetary processes. We know that we're all looking forward to the upcoming budget in the fall. We know that it's going to be a combination of some reductions in some of the federal spending. So the theme is, efficient and reduced federal spending, but also major investments, just as we heard today, as part of the support for the support for businesses that will be affected by tariff measures, and a suite of supports for industrial sectors, including the canola industry, including the agricultural sector writ large. So major announcements today in investments and spending that we're looking forward to. But we also know that this is going to be a budget of restraint at the same time to reflect the reality that we're in an affordability crisis. But at the same time, we need to build Canada, and that means major investments in infrastructure, including defense infrastructure. So we know it's going to be a kind of a bittersweet budget coming. We're going to see some pulling in, but we're also going to see major investments in building up the economy and rebuilding in building houses and rebuilding the infrastructure needs, including major projects that our country is in dire need of.
Can I just add to that, the parliamentary secretary? You know, I think it's possible, like, you know, cutting, as I'll use your terminology, cutting the fat. You can be fiscally responsible and yet still invest into Yukoners and Canadians, right? And if we look at cutting the fat, I want to sort of look at the federal dollars that during my colleague's time in this government, the amount of federal dollars that has flowed through to this Yukon, I think it's important to recognize that, you know, and you know, and I wouldn't call that fat. I would call that investment into the lives of our citizens. And I think it's very important that we understand that the relationship between, you know, this Yukon government and our federal government is strong and vibrant, and that we're working constantly to make sure that Yukon punches above its weight to get what we need for the infrastructure that's required in this territory.
So just for clarity, and thank you for the question. It's a good one, and it's certainly got all of us engaged. So the reason we're here today is that Yukon signed an agreement with Ottawa, a 10-year agreement with Ottawa a few months ago, that solidified the Canada Community Building Fund commitment, which this year is $18.75 million and will continue for the next 10 years. That's why we're here today. It was made several months ago. It is a continuation of the former gas tax, but as Parliamentary Secretary Hanley just said, it is something that is now a permanent part of the funding that Yukon will receive, at least for the next 10 years of the agreement that we just signed with Ottawa. As part of the agreement that we signed, as I've said several times today, we have streamlined the way that program is managed for municipalities to make it easier for them to administer. And that's good too, it's red tape. As far as the federal government's investment in the territory goes, as the Premier said, we've had, over the last 9 years, historic investments of more than $600 million, closing in on, you could probably get close to $1 billion in investment in the territory that has improved the North Klondike Highway, that has improved our airports, that has rebuilt the Teslin Bridge, which was built at the time of the Second World War and wasn't meeting the needs of Yukoners because we're trying to get goods and material into the territory and into Alaska, which is the only land access to the state of Alaska, which is a major bulwark for North American defense. For the Yukon's history since the Second World War and before, we've been a transportation and logistics hub for North America. This is where the Yukon all the aircraft going to the Soviet Union during the Second World War came through here. We've been very good. We're the furthest west airport in Canada. We are a very, very important place for strategic defense. We're now shifting our focus in Canada towards taking more of our defense for funding our defense more vigorously. And the Yukon has a very important place in that North American defense network that we're going to continue to. I've been talking to my federal counterparts for years now about that importance, about the importance of the Alaska Highway, and the importance of investing in the Yukon for many reasons, but also for strategic importance. So that's going to continue, and I'm confident that our relationship with the federal government will continue to bring infrastructure investment, not only like this, but in our roads and infrastructure into the future. So that's what I have to say on that. Thanks for the question.
Well, thank you, everyone. If there are any more questions, you can feel free to shoot me an email, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Now we're going to just move this table over as well as the podium, so that we can have the three speakers up here so we can take a group photo.